Hey, thanks for coming to my channel. Okay, so this is going to be a pretty dry video unless you're trying to do this yourself. This is a certain way of designing applications if you're not a developer. Um, it's just like anything else, like a carpenter trying to, well, not trying, just a carpenter designing a set of stairs, which actually is a pretty interesting thing to do. Or, auto mechanic trying to trace out a current drain somewhere. Um, a million different techniques of doing things. There's right and wrong ways in all the different places and industries to do things, right? Well, this is also the case in development. And when you're going for an interview, which of course any normal person despises, a lot of times one of the big questions is do you know patterns? And that's sort of what I was just talking about. It's the question of, do you understand that because you see the same kind of problems as you do in any other industry. You sort of see things as a set of problems pertaining to your particular thing that you're doing. And it becomes, after a while, you don't want to reinvent the wheel, and there's certain techniques. Okay, I think I beat that dead horse, right? So what I want to talk about today is something called model view model. And if you're a developer, then you're kind of here maybe to see what the hell I'm doing. And as soon as you can scroll forward, as soon as that picture of my backyard over there on the screen is gone, and you know I'm not full of crap, well, you'll know at least I tried to start talking about the software. And I'm ranting right now because I'm just talking about it until I get started. So, and even if you are a developer, if you're a super genius, then there's no point, because I'm not a super genius and you're not going to learn anything. But if you're a new developer, you might learn something, because I've been doing it for a while, longer than I'm embarrassed to admit how long. So there's that. And maybe I don't even know enough for how long I've been. And here's the thing for you young people: like when you hear somebody like me say, you're sort of at odds about something, and the first thing that the idiot says is, "Well, I have been doing this for 26 years." The first thing you should be saying is 26 years. Wow, long time to have not learned anything. Okay, I'm just giving. See, that's a gift. I'm giving that to you if you're a young person. This is what you say to somebody, because I don't care how long you've been doing something. The smartest people I know who've been doing things the longest amount, that would be the last thing that they would say. They would say, oh, maybe you should turn it the other way. Genius people will say things like, maybe you should lift it an inch. And then they'll be like, oh, that won't. And then they'll just be quiet. Okay, it's not. Okay, so I'm just saying, because I freaking hate that stuff. It's like the older I get, like I'm still a little tiny kid, and that's like such a cheap thing. I've been doing this for 14 years. Oh, really? All that time and you still suck at it? All right, let's move forward. All right, so that's my attitude. But anyway, talking about UIs. UI is short for user interface, right? Which is what a dashboard in a car is, right? When you drive your car, that whole thing is user interface. You're not running the engine. You're not. Unless you got an old-time car with a choke, you're not doing anything with the mechanics. You're turning a wheel, and you're like everything is right. So user interface is like a button. It's a readout. It's a dial. It's a control. Right? All these things are both, you see them in your car. The car dashboard is a perfect example, the whole thing. Except cars are much more complicated, and there's no real standard, right? There's some up at the roof, and there's over here on your left and on your right, and there's some underneath on the dashboard that the other guy can't read. You know what I'm saying? And that's all user interface. So what happens is, in development, one of the techniques, one of the patterns, is that you want your user interface. For example, the speedometer in your car has nothing to, right? It indicates your speed, obviously, right? Whether it's digital or analog or really even old speedometer. The speedometer in your car, actually the really old ones are connected to the transmission, right? Is really just it's linked, right, to the speed of the car, but there's a whole set of things going on to even in a direct drive old time speedometer, you have gears and things, so you have logic in there, right? You can't just hook it up and say, oh, this is my speed, right? You have to be very careful. You have to know the ratios of the gears, right? You hook up the wrong speedometer to the wrong gearing and the wrong transmission, and you won't get the right speed, right? And you put the wrong size tires, even whatever. So the speedometer is just it doesn't know anything about what it's getting in your car. And that's the ideal case, right? You want, like, if you're a mechanic and you have a transmission problem, you don't want to think about the damn speedometer. It's the beauty of the computer in the car, because it even further decouples and separates. It's like you unplug the computer, the speedometer has zero to do. And it's even true with your gas pedal, by the way. It's a fly-by-wire. All cars have fly-by-wire gas pedals, right? There's nothing except a little freaking, like, a volume switch, potentiometer at the end of your gas pedal talking to a computer. It's completely decoupled. But see, the beauty is if something goes wrong with the gas pedal versus the engine, they're separate systems. They're easier to determine what's going wrong, and things are better off that way, as long as you don't have an EMP or something going on like that. So anyway, so it's the true also in software. You might have your bank account, your database information. It's right, your user front end, right, the little thing that's displaying your balance. It doesn't care who you are. It doesn't care actually what the balance is, right? It's just saying, it's got like a handout, like saying, here, just give me some information and I'll just pass it forward. That's the ideal case. But you can write software where things are not so decoupled, right? So MVVM, now I'm going to start sliding a little bit more into development language. I guess I'll get rid of the pictures for people to go forward, or I made that promise, right? All right, so now talking about MVVM, basically, it's a WPF application, so let's go ahead straight away. And I'm using Visual Studio 2019. There's different types you can get. You get Community Edition, etc. But like, I'm just gonna blow through all that because, man, I tried to do this a couple times. It takes so long, and I'm long-winded. So you heard all my introduction. Look how long that was. All right, so it's just gonna be copying and pasting from a known working project, which is probably better because I get confused about stuff, and maybe I don't understand every particular little thing, but I sort of, actually tripping over myself, I kind of was forced to understand. Anyway, so let's go do this. Let's go, new project. It's going to be a WPF app, right? So if you don't have that, you just type in WPF. Whoops. Now I'm doing a .NET. So I recommend you do the .NET if you have this stuff. It's be easy. I should be making a .NET. Let me just do this WPF, right? And I'm going to do .NET Framework. Be careful. There's .NET Core. There's a couple of interesting things here, but we're going to stay with .NET Framework. Okay. Close WPF app. And obviously I've done this once before, so let's see if this works. I'm just, framework version doesn't matter. I like to try if I can get the latest, right? I'm not sure. Anyway, so let's create this. So, okay, so right away we have a nice, very straightforward application. Let's just do two things. Let's create a button. And let's create a label. Right, just two things that we can see, and I'm not gonna spend too much time. I'm afraid of spending, like, talking so long, so I'm just resizing this right now. This could become a bear once you start playing with the resizing, because there's so many different levels of, so don't worry about resizing. But first thing I like to do with a WPF app is come in here and say, look, listen, let's get something straight. I want the Windows startup location to be the center of the screen. Yes, I tend to write things. Were you able to see that? Yeah, okay. Rather than go, I think over here in the properties somewhere, right, there's right, Windows start. I don't mess with this stuff if I can. It's just like annoying to me. I guess after a while I've been just used to, so I just typed it right here. So now if I just run, I know it's all centered, it's all sloppy looking, right? This is awful. I used to yell at people about that. Do I have to tell you you have to center it? Why do I have to tell you? Okay, so nothing happens, right? Nothing's going on. Now the first thing that you might want to do, and it's legit, but this is not MVVM, is to double click on this, right? Like if I double click on this, it creates this code behind, it creates this method, this handler for that button in the code behind, and very simply I can say, I can set, doesn't this, what is this, label? No, does this have a name? All right. Anyway, I'm not going to even get into that. Right. What I was going to do is try to set the label, but I'm not going down that road because I never do that. There is a variable, right? I mean, it might be. Let me see. This label. All right. I'm not even going to look for it. Right. So let's just break there. Let me run this. You see what I'm saying? This is the most simple way to do an application. I create the button, I click the button, see, I broke. It stops right there. I can do whatever I want in this method, right? That's not MVVM. The problem with that is that this function here, this method that's getting called, I'm going to have to instantiate something. You know, it's not like wrong, but for MVVM, what you want to do is you want to create a class that's completely separate, and you want to create notifications for that class that go right to the XAML, right? If I like for example, the label, I want to create a simple class, just has a property called label, and when I change the property, I just want the label to update. I don't want to be setting the text of some control. I don't want to be, that's the beauty of MVVM, is it's just going to bind this stuff all together. So let's come back here, let's get rid of this, right? And let me just run it. It's going to have an error because it's linked up. It's going to have two places, I believe. See here, course. Oh, maybe it's just this one spot, right? Click. You should not be seeing any clicks, right? Because this could get real busy. So we're going to. Should have cleared that out. And we are back. Right, nothing happening again, right? There's nothing to break on. So that's the first thing. You want to create a simple WPF application, and you want to not do anything with the code behind at this point, right? So now that's fine. Put the UI aside. Now you want your logic, right? So what's my logic? My logic is nothing. My logic is probably, it's going to be a method to change text, right? It's a set text, and then the text is going to be, and then I want to see the text there. Very simple, right? Like I'm just trying to keep this very simple. It's not about the logic. It's not about the UI. It's about the binding of the UI to the logic. So let's do this. Let's go ahead and make a simple class. Simple class. We'll call this. We're going to call this a view model. Okay, because this is going to be a model that the view relies upon, that it's bound to, or you know what? Let's just call it something. No, I'm going to call it view model. View model, just so that we know that the stuff is going on and whatever. It could be anything, right? Let's okay, no, let's just call it something like that would be practical. Let's just say I can't even think of anything. Let's just keep it a view model, okay? All right, so it's a public class. It's a simple class, and I have a public string called title equals, get set title. What is the problem here? Public class view model. Why can't I do get public string type? Oh, that's why. Duh. Okay, fine. I have a string and then a method, right, to set the string. Very straightforward. Public void set title, right? String input string. Right? Very straightforward. And then, of course, we want to set title equals. Actually, let's make it like how it would probably be private. Yeah, there it is. There it is. Private set. Okay, so now this title is read only to the outside of this class. right? And the only way to do it is through this. Look, I know it's you might be saying, well, we'll just do a set there. Yeah, but that's not the point, right? Of course, we could just set the title through the set. The point is that we want to see this title after we set it just automatically updated. That's the trick. That's what we want to see, right? We want to see when we set title here, boom, just magically it shows up, right? So it's not about doing the right thing on with this particular field, with this particular property. So let's just go ahead. Equals input string, right? Okay, everybody agreed to very stupidly simple class here? Okay, let's save everything. Now, let's go ahead and set the title to something that we can sort of, it's nothing right now. So let's set it to initial title. Yeah, we'll just call it that, right? So now, if we run this, the ideal thing would be to see initial title show up in the label, right? And it doesn't show up there. So what we want to do is let's bind it up. So let's do the one thing that we want to do in the code behind. And here's an interesting thing. If you're thinking dependency injection, yes, right? You might want to do that here, because what we're going to do is there's this property of a WPF window. This window is not a this is a WPF class window. Not a systems, I know it says system windows, but this is a different deal here. Let's see. I don't want to get too caught up in this, but this is Windows base, right? I'm not sure. Okay. Anyway, that should be fine. Anyway, if you do the WPF, see, I go down these rabbit holes. I shouldn't. Okay, so there's this property called data context. It's a built-in property. Okay, it's of type object, right? It's a framework element, which is the base of this, somewhere the base of something, all the way at the bottom. This is defined. And this can be object, can be anything, right? But of course, we're going to set it to our simple class that we created, right? We created this simple class over here, view model. Boom. Right? So let's go over here and let's just set our data context to a new instance of that view model. Now, of course, I said dependency injection. This right here, you can inject anything at this point. And, okay, I'll leave it at that. We're keeping it simple. So we just explicitly set our data context, a built-in object of this window, a built-in property of this window. We set this to a new instance. Now let's see what happens if we just run. Oh, break my heart. Okay. Well, the reason that, now you might have guessed, I was expecting that label to read this value. But of course, ridiculous, because I never set the content. It's just set to this static value label, right? So let's fix that. So we're going to bind this. Now this whole page, data context has been bound, right, through its code behind to right at startup to this very simple class. So now this whole thing is bound up, but we didn't bind any particular control. So let's bind our particular label control to the title value. So very simply, binding title. Now this value right here could be arbitrary. We could call this ham sandwich, which is stupid. But here's the deal. It's not going to work, right? Nothing's going to happen, but it won't break. It's sort of like HTML, but it recognizes that I did bind it. It's just like that value doesn't exist. That value does not exist right now. So I could either come over here and change this to ham sandwich or get myself right title. And so this is arbitrary, right? So this binding, a lot of this isn't art, right? This content, I can't just make that up, right? These are dependency properties of the control. I can't just make that up. But I can't. But what you're bound to, you can. It's just if you can't back it up with something, it's going to be blank. So we just fixed that. We bound to this class. And we do have a property called title. So we match that to the property of our class. Now let's see what happens. Let's see what happens here. Now here's our thing running. I'm going to restart. Initial title. Right. That's what we set it to. Right. So let's just try it again. Hey baby. Hey baby. Let's try that. Rerun the application. Ah, nice. Now if you notice, what's cool here is that this class is, right, we're just in our class. We're just minding our own business. This class knows nothing about anything. You know, this is our class. Like Colonel Klink's, who is Schultz. No, I know nothing. Let's type this. Like, let's not do that. I know nothing. This class knows nothing. So let's run this again. And that's the beauty, right? See, so already before we've gone anywhere, there's nothing in our code behind, right? Look at our code behind. There's nothing here. Let me zoom out a little bit. There's nothing in our code behind. It's just, all it does is we assign the data context, which could have been injected from somewhere. And this whole view could have been from another assembly altogether, right? So just throwing out ideas to you. And look at our XAML. Our XAML is stupidly simple. What did we do? We just said, look, bind to this title thing, right? We did two things. We said data context is a simple dumb class and has no significance to anything, and bind to some freaking property, and boom, right away, right? Bam. We have binding. Now the thing is what we don't have is we don't have the ability that, like, if I call, first of all, this command is not bound. I don't believe this command is bound, so that's a problem. The class is bound, so let us see what happens. Okay, so we know right away that that button has to be sort of bound to the, so guess what this is? It's a very simple command. This is built in, right? I can't make this up. This is a dependency property of controls, of a button control, to say the least. Command, we're going to do the same thing that we did with this content. We are going to use this syntax and we're going to bind it to a thing called a command. And we'll call this, what do we have over here? We have a set title. Now, I'm just giving you a hint. This is not going to work. Okay? Let's see what happens. If I call this, it does not work. Actually, this takes a parameter. Let's make this simple. Let's not put a parameter. Let's just make it really simple, right? Say new title, because that can get sticky if we want to put parameters and things. So we keep it simple. But see, it's not breaking, right? It's not breaking on this. It's not break point is still not stopping when I click the button. So we're bound, but it's only going to take the initial values. If we change this value, even if we were able to call this, if we change the value, it would not update. So the real meat and potatoes of MVVM is not just that it's bound, but that it is reacting. It is enabling you to call methods and enabling changes in your properties to be reflected on the UI. Again, just as easy as we were able to do here, right? Where we run the application and it just shows up, right? So if we are in our application and things are happening and some kind of action happens, an event happens and the title changes, we want to see that reflected just like that. We don't want to be dealing with set the text of some control. We don't want to do that. Okay, so how do we do that? Now I'm going to just kind of, what we have to do is there is an interface. All right, let's back up. Let me just lead you to it, and I'll try to explain it if I can. So the first thing overall answer to the question is we need to create notifications up to the binding infrastructure of WPF so that it can transfer them back and forth to our XAML if we want them to go back and forth. In the case of our title, we're really just going one way. But we don't need to really worry about that. But just to let you know, the binding goes two ways, right? If I hit a button on the XAML, it's going to my class, and if I have the title, obviously going out to the XAML is working. But that is so rudimentary that we are nowhere. So let's do this. Let's create okay, we're not running. We'll create a new class. Come in here. We'll create a new class called relay command. Okay, CS. Okay, so this is going to be a public class, like all of them pretty much. And this class is going to support an interface called ICommand. Okay, so ICommand, which doesn't exist here. Type that, and well, if you're not using 2019, you may not have this IntelliSense. So what it's saying is, well, I need to be using a using statement, so it'll add that for me at the top. System Windows input, if you don't have all this magic of the auto magic. Actually, I'm starting to like that term. You get your ICommand identified, and ICommand is a special binding interface that we will implement in this class that will handle our commands, our command calls. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. Now, what you can do is you can go ahead and just implement this, okay? And you're going to basically get this simple implementation here. But I'm going to undo this. I'm going to paste this, and I'll slowly scroll so you guys can catch up. The class is not too huge, but there's a lot to go through. It'll take me a long time to sort of explain it. So let me just paste it out here. So let me come over here and get my relay command class all together. Let me grab this, and I'm going to come here, and I'm going to paste. Boom. Okay. So you see, it's not a huge class, right? So let me scroll. In case you're actually working with this, let me just go very slowly. So, okay. So here are. Okay. I'm just leaving it there for you to copy, right? In case you are working with this, but I am going to sort of explain because it's kind of hard to just show the code. So first thing is there's two constructors for this relay command. Okay, when this command is handling a button click, that's essentially the commands are going to be sort of like a verb, like an that's not a good term because verb means something else, but especially in restful. But I don't mean verb, restful verb. I mean just an action, just doing something. The commands are basically going to handle a button click. I have a tendency to want to double click on this, and I can't, right, because it's going to create the code behind. So, but the thing is sometimes we want to disable that button, right? Like, for example, if we click the button to go, like, do a long process, we don't want you to click it twice, so we may disable it. So what we want to do is we want to be able to create this relay command, and one constructor will handle it when you are passing in. Now, an action is just very simply a way of packaging up a void function. So this object is going to end up being this void function right here. This set title is going to be manifest as this argument right here. Okay, so the whole trick about an action and this relay command is that what you're doing is you're packaging up. You're saying, look, I'm gonna take. I promise that it'll be a void function. Actually, you can go beyond this and make it non-void return. But right here, just a void function, and we're gonna package it up, and we're just gonna execute it. And this class is beautiful because it has no idea what it's executing, right? It's just executing an action of whatever type you gave it. And all it has to do is execute it. And that's the whole idea about the ICommand. It's just being able to execute your function without your method, without knowing anything about the method. And you can also add arguments to, you can have a return type. You can also add arguments. That's beyond the scope of this. So The reason that there's two constructors is one handles where you don't care whether you disable the button or not. So, right, so if you just pass it, we'll deal with how we manifest this in this class, but like right now we're not saying whether it's enabled or not. But basically you can say, you know, I'm passing in the function and just run the function, or you can say I'm passing in actually two things. The predicate, which is really saying whether or not I can execute the function, and the beauty is the binding through the ICommand will enable or disable the button based on whether we can execute it or not, right? So that's if we want to do that, it's an option. So that's the whole point of having two. Actually, I see a problem here. Does anybody see that? Actually, we have two constructors. One to deal with just the command, one to deal with the command and whether or not you want the predicate of the command, whether or not you want it to execute. Now, if you see this like I do, this should actually be also making sure that this execute exists, right? This validation here. Anyway, that was just a small thing in case you saw that. I finally caught it. Okay, so first thing is you want to have your constructors in order here. In order meaning, you know, you want them set up and proper. Okay. Now we're going to have private ways of dealing with the changes, but we're also having private backing fields for the execute and can execute, right? So that's all this is, private backing fields, and obviously we have public properties for these. Okay, so you got it. So I'm just here's the top of the class. All right, so I'm going to scroll past the two constructors. Okay, so this is a handler for, you know, once you're set up, you may decide whether or not that button should be shown dynamically, and this is an event handler that handles that. And basically, this is the way that you're basically adding and removing a handler. This is actually an interesting concept here of how you add an event handler to a base class, or how basically how you just do the internals of dealing with that. Here's the can execute. This is basically simply just seeing whether the delegate exists. And to to tell this is the execution of the delegate, right? Delegate's just the method, right? The method that handles the can execute, right? There's two, right? There's a method and there's a predicate, but there's methods. There's methods to handle both the method and the predicate, right? So there's a method to handle the method. There's a method to handle the predicate. Oh my goodness, this is the method that handles the predicate. I could be wrong, but the code works. All right, so I'm going slow so you can see this stuff. Here's the actual execute. Right, so what happens is the binding will execute this when you click on the button, not knowing at all what the actual command was, only having the binding specification, right? The binding specification being this, right? The set title, which actually we're going to change this since it doesn't exist anyway. It doesn't answer to that. So what's going to happen is we're going to create a public property called setTitleCommand that will handle our actual in our class. We will create a separate ICommand interface. Well, let's just do that. Right? So okay, so the first thing is wait a minute. Let me get myself straight here. The relay command. We were looking at the relay command, and if you're copying, I just want to make sure you got everything here. So I'm not going to drag you. Okay, that's the end of it, right? That's the end of the relay command. So there's the end of the relay command. Here is 3 more of those methods. There's the 2 constructors, and there's the top of the class, and there's my usings, right? I don't need these, right? That would be the total usings. Okay, so let me save this. And file, save all. Okay, now still, as you saw, I changed this. This doesn't exist. So let's make this, which will handle this class. So there is a little bit you have to do in your view model to handle its binding. Now, the view model is aware that it's being bound, but it is not aware of what is being bound to. So that's a pretty important distinction. I mean, it knows that it's being bound. It knows damn well what it's being bound to. It's being bound here. Let me get an example of a command. So I'm just going to very simply paste this command in here. So this is coming from somewhere else. So basically, ICommand, right? We need a using. So what was our using that we needed? Windows input. I'm doing it manually this time. I could just say show potential fixes and click that, but let's just paste it in here. I don't need any of those, so just system Windows input. I get the ICommand. Okay, so now our model, by using this using, understands the ICommand interface, and that's the onion model, right? Both from the outside, everything understands this ICommand. That's the idea, right? ICommand is in the center of the onion. View model knows nothing about the view, but it sees ICommand. Relay command knows nothing about the view model, knows nothing about the UI, but it also sees the ICommand. And then, of course, the XAML has access to the ICommand as well, because that's how it's binding these. That's what these binding specifications. How these binding specifications are being linked over to your plain old class. So now what we can do, now that we have our ICommand, and actually, what did we bind to? What did we bind to over here? Let's see. Set title command is what we bound to. So in our view model class, that's what I'm going to call my ICommand. And this doesn't exist, obviously. See, I could have left. Let's do that. String title. Okay. And let's just assign that. The name of the method is not test, it's set title. Okay, so now our errors should be gone. Okay, so now what we have is we have our view model whose button has its command bound to something called set title command. This entire XAML through its code behind has been bound its data context, built-in property, has been bound to our simple view model, who has been made aware of the ICommand and now supports that, and has a public ICommand ready for use called set title command, which just happens to match, well, not just happens, right? I'm saying it that way. But we set this, you said either, right, the thing is that they're independently set. This could be ICommand 1, and it won't work, right? Let's just run it. I think our errors are gone. Our class knows nothing. Oh, but our button doesn't work, right? Anybody know why? I think I know why. I'm not sure. I think it's because I stuck that 1 in there, just trying to prove that your binding can be wrong and nothing will happen in the code. It won't trip over it, right? So let me get that binding right. Now, here's the secret. I'm expecting this stupid button to work and change that text to crap. Let's widen this. I hate when the text... Let's do this. Let's, just before we go, let's increase the size. Font size is, I don't know. I'm putting an explicit number in there. I think there's some... Aren't there some... I think... Anyway, I'm just putting an explicit number. Kind of like HTML-ish, right? Just some random number. So let's run and see what happens. Okay, so again, we're out of room. Wait. I know you want to see if the button works, but we really have to have our title, man. All right. Our class knows nothing. All right, I won't center it. I won't. Oh! I thought that was going to work. What happened? All right. See, hear the panic in my voice. Set title command. Okay, that's the command when we hit the button. Right. In our bound class. That's the name of our... Let's put a breakpoint here and see if anything happens. Oh. Yeah, okay. Let's put a breakpoint. I think the button's working. Let's run this. Ah, my button is working. Look. See? It's working. Let's go. Button. Okay. So you see what's happening here? So now my ICommand interface is all into place. So this relay command we're done with. So basically your view model has to support... Now look at the little bit of footprint I have here in my view model to support that calling button. Again, nothing in our code behind. Just binding up to our simple class. And all we do, we create this, we put this command. Now you can get really crazy, right? You can make this asynchronous if you want, no problem. But that's it to call a command. Now what's happening is we wanted our title to update and it's not updating, dude. All right. So we did half our job so far. So far MVVM, we got 0.5 MVVM, half of it. So our button works. We let it through. We know the data's coming, but our class is not updating. I mean, our property, our title property. Okay, so that's actually something very straightforward. So what we want to do in order to support that, let us first of all, okay, we don't have to create a base class. What we want to do is we want to support a thing called iNotify changed. Alright, I forget, it's some long thing. Okay, that's what it is. Let me copy and paste. This is what we want to implement. iNotify property changed. Just what it sounds like. It's going to notify the binding. Now we're talking about the properties. We're done with the commands. Now we're going to talk about the properties. iNotify property changed. Okay. That is system component model. Okay, so there's the using right here that we need for iNotify property changed. I hate it when people say use this class and they don't tell you what the namespace is, right? So here's the using for it. iComponent, only 2 using so far. And that's it for binding, actually. When we finish this, we're done binding. So let's go ahead and implement, right? That's an interface. We'll let it implement it, right? So it's just a handler, property changed handler. That's it. What do you mean that's it? That's all that I put in there. So what you have to do is what we have to do is we have to do the work to call this property change handler. Now, let's clear things out and avoid the noise. So let us create a new class, right? Let's a base class for this, just so that we can put nothing but the iNotify property, which again is not going to be a lot of stuff, but and we'll call it a view model base CS. Okay. Public class view model base. Very good. We're going to come over back to our view model. We're going to make that a base class. Okay. And what we will do is we will, I think we can just move this, all this iNotify property change stuff. Of course, we got to bring in our using system component model. Let's get rid of the unneeded usings. Okay, so this is our base class so far. Let's file, save everything. Okay, so it's good. We can use this, leave this interface up here. Probably it should be. Okay, the interface specification could be up here, or it could be in the base class. I don't think it matters. I'm just going to leave it there for now. So what I'm going to do is I am going to go ahead and cheat again, and I am going to paste some stuff in here. Okay. Okay, so let us... I'm just going to zoom right through this because I'm going to drag everybody through. Let me get everything in here that I need. I'm just getting all the usings right. Okay. Okay, so here's here is the top of the class. There's the usings that are required. Let me save this. Let me just see if this thing runs first, and then I'll come back to the base class and explain it a little bit if I can. What do you think? Will the button work? Well, the button worked. Will the title update? It still didn't update. Okay, so what's going on here with the title? All right, first of all, why should it update? It's just sitting there. It's updating itself. It has no connection to the binding, right? Remember, our simple command, our simple method is tied into the binding network through this syntax right here. And we can do this over and over and over for 20 buttons for different things, right? Or we could have 20 different things pointing to the same method, right? But now we have to hook up our string. So now what we're going to have to do is we are going to have to get now into explicit backing methods, right? So what we'll do here is we will now create a backing field, not method. So what we all know about, right? Private string, and we'll call it lowercase title, right? As a convention, equals. Okay, good. So, right, everybody recognizes basically didn't do anything except sort of... Now, wait a minute, that's not right. Basically, we didn't do much here. We just created an explicit... now we have access to the backing field, right? And what we're going to do is we are going to get into this. And first of all, now we need to refer to that backing field, a little more modern content. You got, you know, this syntax, title, right? And the private set, whatever, is going to be, yeah. Now, here's what we're going to do. We are going to grab, right? We created that base class, and I promise you we will go back to that class and look at what's going on. We set property. You know what? Okay, let me finish what I'm doing. Set property reference, and we're going to reference this backing field. Title. Get out of here. Title. And we are going to apply the value, right? The value being right in the set. Now, basically, this set property, what this does is this is going to obviously set the maybe it's obvious or not, but it's going to set the title, but also it's going to notify. So let's just run real quick. Oh no! What happened? Right. Run. Now. Right. Okay. Exactly. So, did you see what happened? Now our title. Okay. So, again, here is our UI. Here's our windows. There's nothing going on over here. We bound it to a couple things, right? Okay, so let's walk it through. Okay. I'll get to that base class. I know that's important to some people. It's actually critical if you want to do this, right? Let's just go right to the base class. Let me stop playing games with you. I'm sorry. Okay, base class, not a lot of stuff, right? Okay, so the base class is basically our view model, right? We started out with a simple class, and then we just had to give it support for the binding, which this is the extent of it here, right? We had to modify it a little bit. We have this actual added this one call, and then we actually call our method through this syntax here, and this is going to handle actually this will handle all of our binding for our properties and our methods. This is the base class. Okay. No, I'm sorry. Base class is here. And what we did is we added this set property, which is a generic function. And this is a special attribute which allows us, look what's happening here, right? Set property, you could actually set, I could actually do this, right? Can I do that? Or I think, yeah. Right, this is what you'll see. Why is that red? Why is it red? Why is it red? Oh, yeah, no, why? Anyway, if you're familiar with WPF, this might be a little confusing what's going on here, but this is like what Xamarin does. Instead of actually putting the explicit name of your property, it will actually just, you know, get the name. It'll use reflection to get the name, which is pretty wild. So it needs this attribute here. So here, again, once again, here's my usings. The set property, very interesting function, right? That set property function, which is you're passing in your reference to your backing field. It's using reflection to get the name, and then it sets the property name, and then it calls your standard on property change with your property name, which you might have done up top, but now it's a little bit easier. I got that from Xamarin, man. And then, of course, down here is the actual on property change. What is exactly happening here? Oh, right. Oh, right. This is this call being propagated out to here. Okay, this is the totality of our base class. Okay, so this is our base class for our view model, and this is our view model. So you see our view model simply stayed pretty simple, and we could create other view models and use this view model. Actually, let's try this, right? I believe this will work if I take this just to separate all of this stuff out. Right, so I went to the base class, and the base class implements this interface, which of course it does. But I believe this now will implement the implicitly save all. Will implicitly implement the interface as well. So but it's just a way of keeping. Now my view model is super simple, right? I just bound up to, right? I don't even need this using now. Right now, look, yeah, that's better, right? Isn't that better? All right, so this is my base, my simple class has really a property, right? One property, right? Where's the class view? Right? Can you see the class view? Yes, you can. Okay, so this is the class view, right? Where is this view? Class view, right? So my view model has, right, one property, has, geez, this is noisy. My view model has one property title and, a title command method. Well, the two properties, these two properties are set up to be bound to the framework. And of course, our original information, the title is pretty much the same, but the set title command, right, we had to, our actual method that we want to call, we sort of embedded and sort of just appended the word command. And that's the way, that's a typical methodology, right? So if I have if I have another method, some other method called, set name, I don't know. It doesn't exist right now. Then I could actually do the same thing and set name and name. Right, now they're both would set title, but they could easily, right, so here's the convention. right? So the set name command is going to call a set name. The set title command is going to call. So this is like how they do with attributes, right? But this is just a convention. You don't have to do this, but if you don't do this, you're going to be sorry. And who knows, it might actually become a convention at some point. So let's say I want to call a set name command, right? So I can come out to my window and I can create, let's you know, I'll just copy this button over twice, right? Boom. Right now I have two buttons. And call this button 1 and 2. They're both doing exactly the same thing, except now I want to call set name. Right? So basically what I'm doing here is I'm saying I want one button to call one method, I want the other button to call the other method. What the methods are doing, right? Of course, we don't care. They're doing stupid stuff. They're just setting the title to two different values. So let's see what happens if we run this. Okay, so button 1 sets it to crap, button 2, right. See what's happening? And the whole idea of that text updating, right, that label updating is not because of the button clicks. It's happening because of this property, set. When the set is called, that's what triggers the XAML to get updated. And that's why in the XAML, we bind to a thing called title. Of course, if we were bound to something else, title 1, which doesn't exist, nothing will happen, right? Oh, jeez. Right, actually, it called the right, so we're getting the set, the button's working, actually. See that? But here's the title is name. See the value? Hover over the value, see its name. That's the text, and I run it, and nothing shows up. And then button 2, the value. Oh, I guess button 2 was name. Button 1 says crap. I should have thought of something better, right? Right, and the property's getting updated. Title is updating, but the front isn't. And the very simple, and this will drive you nuts, is because the binding is wrong. Right, the binding was off. So fix that binding. And then all is well. Just like our favorite Toyota repair guy, all is well in the world, he says. I forget what his name is. Great guy. Yeah, just subscribe to him. So that's MVVM, baby. The beauty of MVVM is your code behind looks like that. Well, you know, you might have some interesting things going on to set this data context. And then look, if you have DI, look how easy it is to just switch over to a different, completely different class, just happen to have the same, things to bind to, right? Completely, you can just flip the logic like in 2 seconds. Completely keep your UI and just completely change the logic by simply changing your data context and knowing what to bind to, right? All right, so basically what you're doing, okay, so let me go over real quick. So basically you create this simple class, this window, and you create the window and a simple WPF and the simple class. First thing and the class itself needs to support iNotify property changed in order for the properties to update on the XAML. And you also need to support for your methods. Oh, I forgot to mention one other thing. You also need to support for your methods the ICommand interface. You don't have to, right, you have to support the ICommand interface so that you can call your commands. And then you just bind to your properties and go. And your code behind is free and clear. And you get into some interesting things, like, for example, what if you want to close the application from your model, right? You have to sort of, that's an interesting problem, because your model isn't even aware that there's an application, and you don't want to notice, there's nothing in my model about app domain or UI or anything. The model knows nothing about anything except its own logic. If it's a database, whatever it has to do, it doesn't, and that's the beauty. So I can have a software team just working on the model, right? At the same time, I can tell another software team to work on this SAML and change it and change the colors and just don't mess with the bindings. Make sure your bindings stay, right? These are I can give them a list of bindings and say, I don't care what you do. Just make sure, and this is called decoupling. This is the beauty. Was that somebody outside my window? Anyway, so that's the decoupling. All right, so that's MVVM. This thing is incredibly long. I hope you enjoyed it. Whatever, you're going to have to scroll back and forth because I don't know how to do these videos. I don't even know what's going on. All right? Anyway, thank you very much. Have a good day. And if you made it this long, awesome. Thank you very much. Take care.